Tonight on the Game On podcast, we salute an absolute legend of the game on his special day. And Port Adelaide, backs against the wall, keep their season alive just. And Adelaide, the Crows, take an important step, but they need to take a few more to be considered genuine contenders. All right, let's do this. Welcome to the Game On podcast. Once again, my name's Pete. Joined in the studio here with Malcolm. And Malcolm, how's your week been, mate?
Yeah, not bad, mate. Bit disappointed yesterday, obviously, with Norwood going down to Sturt. It was,
we will talk about that.
Shocking last few minutes.
We will talk about that one a little bit later. How's the book sales going at the moment, mate? Should give that a plug.
Yeah, not too bad. The one pub in particular is going okay.
Yep.
So I'll keep spreading the word and annoying people.
Mate,
unfortunately, my Facebook days are over. We won't. Yeah, someone hacked me overseas, and let's just say they did a bloody good job of it. So
there you go. We'll kick off tonight by saying please like, rate, subscribe to the channel. We've been online now for a little while. We're starting to gather a little bit of momentum, but every little bit counts. Please comment on and share it with friends and family as well.
G'day, Normie Stremple too.
Absolutely. We've got something from Normie coming up a little bit later. All right, mate, we better get into Around the Grounds.
Around the Grounds.
All right, coming up a little bit later, we've got obviously the soccer, the netball, and a little bit of the cricket to talk about a little bit later on. But we'll kick off with the AFL first. Mate, I'm going to flip the coin. Port or Crows, where would you like to start?
Oh, I think Port will be quicker. Look.
Well, not necessarily. But
it wasn't a great game. That's the point. I reckon at the moment there's a real gap in the standards. There was some shocking football this weekend. You're sitting there with a drama of Tasmania, and yes, we want a side in Tasmania. Yes, it should be, but it should be a relocated side. We won't bore people with that.
Yep.
There's too many teams now.
Yep.
Richmond, Sydney was a shocking game on Saturday, Port game, and then the comedy hour of the West Coast North Melbourne game. I was at the Payneham Tavern watching that, and everyone was just laughing.
Yes. Thank you to Normie for sending a message through saying that can anyone remember a day of football that was so hard to watch? 3 doses of absolute, and we'll beep it out.
I think a little bit hard on the Geelong Gold Coast game in terms of the conditions. I will say in that regard, diabolical coaching by Hardwick. There's one thing. We've all seen it. Against Sydney, when they get that +1 and you just allow it behind the ball.
Yep. It hurts you
every
every time.
So well organised. You man up against them. There was that. Not tagging Holmes, considering Bailey Smith's pulled out. So you didn't have to worry about should it be Smith, should it be Holmes.
Yes.
Miller had to go to Holmes. To say that was a fail with a huge capital F.
Yep.
Is an understatement.
Yep, fair enough. We'll talk about some of those individual games in a minute. Port Adelaide, never count Port Adelaide out after beating a lacklustre GWS, and that's just probably where the question's at the moment. It is this time of year. It's a little bit wetter, a little bit dewier. They were in Canberra.
Well, GWS should have Richmond should have beaten them the week before. GWS didn't win that game. Richmond found a way to lose it.
Yep.
And
Port Adelaide were in the same boat.
A little bit, and it was an average, and it was just almost who was going to make the error and who was going to finally capitalise on that error, and that was Port Adelaide with the poor kick by Whitfield, the interception, and Moraes kicking his first goal. His first goal. And, it was... And now Port, that keeps them alive. They get Horn Francis back this week.
Well, this is what I was going to ask. Last week they sort of had somewhat near their full squad on the track, minus obviously Horn Francis and probably Lukosius are probably the 2 big ones that could come back in this week. Does that just give them that little bit of impetus? Because we know what Port Adelaide are like when the backs are to the wall. Never count them out.
Well, it's a huge game against Melbourne now.
Yep.
Massive game where if they'd lost, I think it was, the season's effectively over anyway. Now they could get on a run, win 5 or 6 straight in a row, and you're back in it. So
when you're relying on other teams and percentages and everything like that, it does get dangerous, doesn't it?
Port's percentage is so bad, that's effectively another game.
Yep.
So I still don't think they'll make it, but it keeps them alive.
Absolutely. They're going to have a few big weeks. Miles Bergman is proving he should be a huge priority when it comes to signing. He's all class.
He certainly is, and that's probably the amusing bit of the whole Wanganeen-Malira bit.
Yep.
That if he does end up deciding he wants to go to Port, I think they do end up losing Bergman as part of it. So sort of a Rob Peter to play Paul situation.
Yep.
So, yeah.
That one's going to be an interesting watch, and we'll talk about that one a little bit more in our general AFL topics. Everything has to go right for Port Adelaide from now on, but they're chasing their tail a little bit because of some of those earlier results. Kenny's obviously put his hand up and said, look, I'm the man to see them through to the end of the season. Is there any benefit of Josh Carr taking over the team now?
Personally, no.
No.
And I did actually ran into Richo yesterday at Alberton and said, well, at least it gives you a week or so away, because he played footy for Adelaide Uni, so I've known Matty for years.
Yes.
Actually used to live, as a kid, he lived 2 doors down from my in-laws' place, so I've known him for donkey's years.
Yep.
So, yeah, I said in that way it was good news for him. So
you just mentioned you were down at Alberton there yesterday. The facilities down there, I haven't been down there since they've done it, but it looks pretty good.
Facilities upstairs and that are great. They've done a bloody good job of it, but I'm sorry, that was easily the negative of the weekend.
Yep.
South Australia were fantastic against Victoria, won by, 65 points.
Yep, against Vic Metro.
So it gives them a huge chance in the carnival.
Yep.
And it was amusing because they kept coming up to the grandstand and say, oh, you're going to have to move at the end of this game. And everyone was just going, yep, no problem. Now, I stayed. I just thought I wanted to stay to see how many people were there. I reckon there was between 500 and 700.
Yep.
And a former guest of ours on the show, I was with Gregory Quinn upstairs for a while, and he's obviously spent enough time at Alberton, probably as much time as I've spent at Norwood.
Yep.
And he said this is easily the worst crowd he's ever seen.
Wow.
And he was quite depressed by that. And, it was shocking.
Yeah, it's a real problem, isn't it? We'll talk about that one a little bit as we go on. Mate, I did ask last week, but really is Port's pass mark finishing the season pretty much all on even terms?
Yeah, roughly.
Is it now between 8 and 12 is probably the realistic goal?
I think so.
If they finish below that, where does that leave Port Adelaide? Does it require a clean out at the end of the season? Because this is where I'm sort of I'm struggling to reconcile how they keep it.
A really hard one. I admit there was one thing on the AFL.com today. Who do you think the youngest side in the AFL is at the moment so far this year on average?
On average, you'd probably say Richmond, but then they've got those...
Yeah, they have got a couple of
older ones that sort of bumps it up a little bit. It
actually surprised me. It's Fremantle.
Yep.
So I looked at that. Everyone else is they're reasonably close together, apart from Collingwood.
Yep.
I
wouldn't have guessed Freo.
Yeah, I think it would have been interesting to see how many guesses we both would have had to have before Freo.
Yep.
And
I think you seduced with Richmond a little bit on the basis of what they drafted.
Yeah.
But they do have that experience.
They're still playing McIntosh. I'm not really sure why.
Yep.
Prestia.
Lynch.
Bolt. Hopper, Taranto. So there's still a bit there.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Yep. But Freo, that's a...
Yeah, it was just an interesting stat.
And yet everyone sort of had pegged them for top 4 at least.
I still think they are a huge chance for top 4 with the draw they've got to come.
Yeah, because they have a few home games, don't they?
Yeah, well, they play 3 in a row at the moment. They've got the bonus of this week for the relocated game, which if that had been in Melbourne, where they're iffy in Melbourne, that would have been a 50-50 game. I just,
Yep.
And, Melbourne already lost that game, and has it derailed Melbourne's season when they were building momentum, playing at Alice Springs instead? So...
Yeah, selling games. We talked about it a bit last week, that if you start selling games, it could come back to buy you. All right, let's move on to Adelaide, mate. The Crows get the chocolates after Brisbane were almost spooked in that last quarter in making some uncharacteristic misses.
Yeah, it's an interesting one though, isn't it? Everyone's sort of highlighted on Brisbane with the last quarter, but let's not forget Adelaide kicked 0-6 in the first quarter. And actually, Adelaide actually missed more goals.
Yes.
In terms of in that last quarter, 4 of those things were for Fremantle were actually rushed.
Yes.
So I think it got a
Brisbane.
Brisbane,
Yep.
sorry.
Yep.
It actually got a little bit skew-whiffed there.
Yep. It was just that it came at a very crucial time of the game.
Zach Bailey thought he'd do the right thing when he got a shocking free kick. He thought he'd kick it out of the full, yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
Yes, that was a terrible
a couple of set shots weren't great. Adelaide had to kick more goals in the last quarter than they'd kicked for the first 3 quarters.
Yeah.
Is that just a case of, and I have heard a little bit of what Matty Nix said, and is it a case of that he did release the shackles and handed it over to the players? Because that's a hard thing to do in that situation.
It is, but also a little bit. It's funny if you kick the thing between the 2 big white things, it suddenly changes everything.
Well, 8 entries into the forward 50 for 5 goals.
Yeah, it's crazy.
But teams do that these days. It's probably symptomatic of what happens these days as teams get on a roll like that.
A little bit, yes, very much so. But also Jordan Dawson, jump on my back, follow me. It was actually smart to push him forward more. Let's make use of him more overhead, which beats Dunkley, who's such a good athlete tagging. So it was actually, that was well done. And he got involved. Ironically, you could almost say in terms of winning, Adelaide almost hit the front too early in terms of the way. Because I do think they do get a bit spooked. Like, they got a goal from a kick out where Brodie Smith boots it, goes over the top,
down
Rankin
the middle,
forces it forward. Harris Andrews went to make the contest, didn't get there, so he exposed the next line. The knock on, very well done by Tex, good footy smarts as
Keezy
usual.
hands it over to Rochelle and goal.
Bang. And so he's taking the kick-outs again, but they went wide to the boundary every time. Well, and want to go down the middle and
open them up again.
And open up and go to Thilthorpe, who's a fair chance to catch it as it is.
Everything that comes his way, he basically gobbles up these days. I mean, I'm sitting here watching it, and every time you see him go for that mark, you're like, he's just going to clunk it. He's just going to clunk it.
And if he doesn't, the spoil must go to the front. It's not, he's never basically out-positioned or anything, and there's never a decent spoil away from him.
So do you think Brodie Smith stays in the team? Question without notice. Do you think Brodie Smith stays in the team for that very ball that he did, that little stinger, as I called it a couple of weeks ago, over the back, a little bit more penetrating?
It's going to be interesting because if he plays, do they take the risk of playing him on ball? It's a possibility. Or do they decide, right, we'll go with him as sub again, make use of his long leg, and Draper probably comes in for Peatling's stupidity.
Which would make sense.
Yeah, I think that's a possibility.
KRIEVS?
Possibly, yeah.
See, these are the names I'm gonna.
Yeah, I think it's more a 1-for-1. Peatling to play in midfield, who plays inside, and that I think
is a Draper.
Probably be Draper.
Yep. Although Lockie Scholl's having an outstanding
year.
He's more the
outside.
Yep, but he's still having an outstanding year, and they might shuffle the deck chairs a little bit. Do you think Adelaide's balance has become better over the last 6 to 8 weeks with probably a little less midfield time for someone like Isaac Rankin?
Maybe, but I also think it's interesting the last 2 weeks they've finally got Keys playing the main role in terms of, the week before he's on Blakey, this week he's on Zorko, where I still say if he stands Rosie in the showdown, that's a hell of a lot better for Adelaide. Yep. So, I couldn't quite – I think he has I think they've got it right the last couple of weeks.
Segued me beautifully there in saying that is Ben Keys an underrated player for his ability to be here, there and everywhere, and, playing that role of shutting down a dangerous player, but also offensively he's just so good.
Well, his kicking was always iffy, and his kicking's improved out of sight. And he's probably still not great on a reflex one give sort of situation, but you probably don't need to be quite as much as that playing the half forward as you do playing the inside mid.
Yep.
So I think they're using him as it's now better.
Are you happy that he's not getting any midfield minutes?
I like him being used because
Yep.
I've hated this bit of halfback flankers being allowed to just do what they like,
Yep.
and I just think that's important. And it'll be interesting what they do this week against Hawthorn, because Warple's got a fitness test for Hawthorn, and you're reading a bit into it. It's a bit hard on what they've said, but he's 50-50 at best.
Right.
So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
It will be. Adelaide have a huge test ahead of them, playing Hawthorn down in, was it Launceston, I think it is?
Yeah, which I'm not sure. Hopefully that's
on a Friday night?
Quite, yeah. So you'd imagine that it'd be similar conditions. Like, you can't imagine it. But you'd still think it'd be, even if I did look up and they're predicting it's not meant to be wet, but you'd expect there to be dew, so it'll be a wet weather game of footy. So you'd think it may well be a similar game to Friday night.
Yep. So a lot of contested football.
You'd say so.
Can Adelaide expose Hawthorn's lack of defence at times, or do you think they tightened that up against the Bulldogs last week?
Well, it sounds stupid because Sicily's a very good player, but I think they're better off at the moment that he's not playing, because he was playing injured and struggling so much.
So other players were having to cover for him, which left them exposed.
They looked better balanced without him.
Yep.
But Warper was back instead of forward, so they did look better. So, yeah.
It's going to be an interesting watch, that's for sure. Adelaide tall Dan Curtin has been rewarded with the Telstra AFL Rising Star nomination for round 13 after an impressive start to his season.
I think he's been unlucky not to be nominated earlier this year. I thought that was sort of about bloody time one. So,
He was pretty handy against Carlton. I got to see that firsthand.
Yeah. I thought he was unlucky not to get nominated that round.
Yeah. While Tex was struggling a little bit, Curtin definitely stood up at the time. He's becoming a very valuable player for Adelaide, and he joins the likes of Sam Laylor, Connor O'Sullivan, Harvey Langford, Levi Ashcroft. Well, we know how good the Ashcroft brothers are, and Nate Caddy. Do we see Adelaide looking to hold on to him for as long as they possibly can?
You would think so.
Is that contingent around how long Tex goes around for? Because there's some talk that he might go another year.
Yeah, I think this will be it, but let's wait and see. Yep. Probably depends how the year plays out.
Yep.
I thought Tex was good Friday night.
Yep.
I thought he was the best forward overall for Adelaide on Friday night.
Yep.
Phil Thorpe's last quarter was fantastic.
Yep.
But Walker's just footy smarts were on show Friday night. That knock on. And actually, Fogarty, that was well done by Fogarty too. The last
the tunnel ball,
yeah,
so it was an absolute beauty.
Good.
There's some smart players going around there. You don't often say that about footy players, but there's a few players with the head screwed on, well and truly nice and tight.
Unfortunately, not Peatling.
No,
diabolical tackle. I think he's very lucky to only get one.
You stole the words out of my mouth there, mate. As to the Peatling tackle, what were your thoughts? This is the second time he's been caught for it. Do you think Lachie Neale hammed it up a little bit?
No, I didn't think he did, actually.
No, but there were two movements, and that's probably where it went wrong for Peatling.
Oh, his head hit the ground with a bit of force, and that. It's got to be smarter than that. Look, yes, there's split decisions. It's quick. We acknowledge that. It's not easy.
Yep.
But that comes back to tackling technique. Now, he's done it once. Wouldn't you be, I'd love to know how much he's practiced since, because the fact now he's done it twice, whether he then just the heat of the game and the emotion and loses the thought process, but it was a poor tackle.
That certainly can happen from time to time. Do you think teams are learning to tackle by dropping their knees rather than the roll, so to speak?
A bit of both. I think they're just generally improving.
Yep.
Now,
because the tackle itself, wrapping him up, is absolutely technically perfect.
Yeah.
It's the second movement that needs to be worked on.
That, you have to roll. You've got to roll the guy.
You're almost better picking him up.
Yeah, to some extent.
Yeah.
And you landing yourself.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's going to be an interesting one.
But then I reckon young Grant for Centrals will go.
Yep.
He did pick the guy up, but the problem was he drove him. He didn't turn to go down first.
Yep. Yeah, because you almost want to pick him up and then buckle your knees a little bit, don't you? Exactly right. That's going to be an interesting one, considering footy teams hired a lot of rugby coaches there for many, many years. I'm not talking about recently, but previously. And it does get ingrained that, you tackle, you roll, you're sort of dumping. And we still see it with the NRL a little bit, and we'll talk about the NRL a little bit later as well. Adelaide, where do you see them at? Do they have a plan B, or are they just sort of getting lucky with some of these changes at the moment?
There's plenty of plans. The guy pushes up, the half forward pushes up, you tag, the tag drops off at this bounce, goes back the next bounce. You have the roam of the blocker. There's a hell of a lot of different things go on. Look, having read an AFL playbook, it's an interesting document.
Well, it's something that we've talked about previously. Do you think Adelaide's inability to change lanes for the first 3 quarters, and a few people might know what we mean by change lanes, is that little 45-degree or
just go short a bit.
Shorter.
I think overall Brisbane were the better side in terms of they had 74 more touches.
Yep.
It's a few crazy things this week. How many teams won with having far less inside 50 and all that side of things. I think inside 50s isn't as important as a lot of stats. I actually think the one which should have been highlighted for Adelaide winning was having 20-odd more tackles than Brisbane. I reckon that was very important. But Brisbane had enough of the ball to win the game. I still think their best is better than Adelaide's best, but Adelaide got through. Hopefully it builds a bit of momentum. Hopefully this gives a bit of belief, because deep down you're going,
is what I was gonna ask.
Are we good enough?
Yep.
Deep down you probably don't believe it. And all that. Now it's happened, that builds a little bit more. So,
Well, we talked about it during the preseason game where Adelaide got up, and we made mention that does this sort of kickstart things a little bit. They get an opportunity against Hawthorn this week. Then they've got a bye. Now, I'm going to be really interested to see how they come back from that bye.
And Richmond's a side you don't want, being honest, you probably don't want to play after the bye.
Yep.
Because I thought this week for Richmond it was a thing where Sydney went, I reckon Sydney still in the first quarter did a bit, but then the coaching adjusted, put Jordan onto Prestia, and that was really the end of the game. I didn't have a look how many inside 50s Richmond got after quarter time, but it would have been very
it wasn't a lot, that's for sure. Adelaide's back 6, a little bit unheralded with a few players back there.
Well, I think Worrell and Keane have been better than what anyone could have envisaged.
And do we think Murray is better than Butts?
I think he is.
Can they afford to have both of them in the team?
I think it'll be one or the other.
Yep.
I think it will be Murray, but I don't think they'll do that this week. I would be surprised.
After the bye?
Yeah, at least. I think they'll... Murray hasn't played that much footy this year.
Yep.
So I think they probably wanted to play a SANFL for a couple
absolutely.
at least.
Yeah, and they're in a position at the moment where everything's working quite well. We did talk a little bit off there. Max getting caught out a couple of times by some very shrewd blocking.
Yes, knowing Max well enough, he would have been ropeable with himself.
Yep.
Son of Piano, where he got, but it was
Did
a good
see
block.
Piano in the rooms after the game. Yep,
he actually had a smile on his face. Come on, Jim, there's no need for that. Yes,
absolutely love it.
No, I've got to be honest. Jim's a ripper of a bloke.
Yep,
great family, but Jim is a dead set Barry Crocker watching the game. He is so nervous.
Yep. Plays every ball, every bump, every tackle, every kick.
Don't talk while the game's on, Malcolm.
Fair enough.
Yes.
Last one on the Adelaide back 6, Wanganeen Malira. Malira, not Wanganeen Malira. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But Wayne Malira is obviously having a very, very good year. You were a little bit sort of not sure about him early on, he's starting to build, isn't he?
He's been better the last few weeks. His lack of physicality at times still worries me. I thought the first goal, Cameron actually turned the wrong way, and if he was he could have got it. He could have got him, I thought, on that, but he's not a great tackler at times. There's times where he's a bit selective when to go, but as much as I hate it, that is more modern footy now.
It is, and his talent, just that run off of half-back is vital, and I think a few going back, reading the play, marks, almost that intercept mark, especially in that third and fourth quarter for Adelaide there as well.
And I get it that Max has got to be really... he's always on the best small, so he's restrictive, but I'd still love him to be on the end of it more because he is a beautiful kick and he's a great decision maker. Yep. So I'd still love to see him be a little bit more attacking.
Is he a little bit of that role that we've talked about with Lukosius? Could be? Or do you think Lukosius is a little bit higher?
Yeah, I think Lukosius is higher.
And Maxi's a little bit deeper.
Yeah, I think so. But I just would have liked Adelaide in that last 10 minutes to try and get a situation to get the ball in Max's hands.
Yep.
I thought they just went long and repetitive and just didn't think their way through it.
Sort of shut down the game rather than...
get the ball to, you know. Yep. Although, it was funny yesterday with Collingwood, that last bit.
Yes.
They didn't have to do those last three because he was inside 50.
That's
right. He could have taken the 30 seconds before and then had the shot for goal. So it was a bit weird what they did in the last 30 seconds.
But they practice it, and that's something that Adelaide's got to get better at.
Yeah, bloody oath.
Adelaide talked about, or Matty Nix talked about after the game, that there's a lot of things that they'll review. Probably that last 10 minutes in that last quarter was probably part and parcel of that.
Yeah, Isaac Cumming was on Double A tonight and did speak a lot about that side of things.
Yeah, the last 10 minutes, very, very important. All right, let's move on to some AFL hot topics. First up, we have to congratulate Neil Danaher on the Fight MND. Once again, an absolute fantastic cause that everybody's got behind. And how good was it to see the MCG pretty much all blue everywhere? There was just beanies left, right and centre.
No, it is awesome. Look, he's an incredible man. Now, as someone who's 60 plus gets frustrated with technology because I'm not great at it, but now he looks into an iPad and the pupils now give the words out.
That's unbelievable, isn't it?
They've gone through all his press conferences and digitised his voice.
So it sounds like him.
So you're hearing his voice again. So all of a sudden the family's hearing his voice again for the first time in a couple of years, which is awesome.
Yep.
And even the bit they had before the game, the bit about in the museum, and that was his voice.
Yes.
On MMD, the way he first found and his approach and all that.
Yep.
But look, he's incredible. He was fantastic with Chris Grigg and that as well.
Yep.
And just with Laney, Laney from Norwood as well.
Yep.
We've lost both of those two, but he contacted. There's another mate of mine who's got it at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he is the captain coach for Motor Neuron. He's an incredible individual.
Absolutely. The Guard of Honour as well, just shades of Teddy Whitten in that sort of final game, that final state game that SA and Victoria played. Fantastic to Melbourne and Collingwood to line up the way that they did, and it was just inspirational for all involved. So I think they're still taking some donations, so if you want to donate to the MND Foundation, please do. I heard some ridiculous figure, like 147 million or something around that 100 mark has been raised over these 11 years of doing the big freeze.
And there has been progression. Medication now, it's very complex, and it's only because I've talking to Stu about it.
Yep.
And it's when you reach a certain level and then and it's really way too complex to talk on a podcast like this. It'd almost be a separate podcast.
Yep.
And again, I'd want to actually have Stu I'd need
yes.
even more input there to make sure you weren't making a mistake
whatsoever, right.
Because it's such an obviously
Absolutely.
So minute and so intricate. Sorry, is the word.
Yep.
There, so.
And maybe that's something we can tee up at some stage to get that awareness out there. All right, let's move on to some other AFL hot topics. I haven't got it on the run sheet, mate, but Tasmania deal looks all to be done and dusted. They're going to need a miracle now, aren't they, to make this happen? What are your thoughts? Take the playing side out of it. Let's just talk the politics side of it. And the AFL have come out and again doubled down on no stadium, no team.
Yeah, it was interesting too, talking to Norwood have a few Tasmanian players from so I was with parents yesterday and we were talking about the whole situation in Tasmania and yes, because Jackson Callow's mum, so his younger brother's in the Allies side, so he's a chance, all that side of things, and we were talking about that, and she was very firm on Tasmania needing the stadium. And look, you get their financial side and there's people there, but it's just such a huge hot potato down there. Another mate involved in politics down there, but there's a lot of stuff he can't say.
Yep. It's going to be an interesting one to watch. I mean, we know that the stadium is revolving around return on investment that obviously the AFL are looking to put into it. It's going to be an interesting watch, and the closer we get to a state election coming up in the next couple of weeks, it's just mind boggles that it may not happen.
Because they think in all likelihood in the upper house it'll still be the independents who've got the say,
and none of them want it.
They want it, so it's hugely in doubt.
Yep. Brendan Gale said a couple of weeks ago that could be looking for new jobs. So yeah, it's a bit of a worry, that's for sure. All right, let's move on. The Bulldogs get their man. Beveridge signs an extension for 2 years. Good call, bad call.
It's interesting, isn't it? They're 6-6. Can you say they actually know any more than the start of the year?
Yeah.
It's interesting, isn't it? Okay.
They've had some good wins.
Yeah, and some questionable losses. You know, they haven't been great against the other top sides.
Yep.
You know, yes, they've lost a couple which could have gone either way, like the Norwood, being at the Norwood, working at the Norwood Bulldogs at a game at the home of football against Brisbane. They could have easily won that.
Yep.
It was 1 point the difference at the 23-minute mark.
Yep.
You know, all that side of things. So they could have won that, but yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? And
do you think Beveridge deserves to go around another couple of years?
Might be. I'd love to know a bit more. Like, they've lost a lot of players over the journey. They've gone to other clubs.
Yep.
And you've still got their big doubt on Hagen.
Well, that could be a trade to Sydney, it looks like,
Yeah,
or
who
even
knows?
GWS.
Who knows?
So.
But who knows? But I'm just saying there's him at the moment, Bailey Smith. You actually, if you get out the piece of paper, I'll do it for next week.
Yep.
There's players everywhere at other clubs from the Bulldogs. So it's a question mark.
It's how they won their premiership. What was it, 2016? So, yeah, there's not too many, obviously, that would be hanging around after that as well. But you're right, the transient nature of the Bulldogs makes it an interesting watch.
Oh, look, and the ironical bit, if they make the 8 and they all of a sudden have a month on footy like they did in 16, there'd be a chance. Because especially getting Darcy back this week, so he's going to have footy played before then, and that does change them up.
Yep.
Ridiculously. Like, he's incredible.
Yep. What do you do with
Norton?
Yeah, so do I. What do you do with Norton? Because he's obviously benefited by Darcy not playing. Can they coexist?
Well, I don't think he suits playing on the number one defender, so I actually think it helps him, Darcy being back.
Yep.
But as everyone's been saying, there's no coach twisted magnets more than Beveridge, but the one he hasn't done is put Norton back into defence again. And, yeah, that's a bit bewildering.
I can't understand that one either. All right, mate, let's talk some hottish topics when it comes to removing the bounce. Is this a priority, obviously, for the new CEO of football or GM of football?
Personally, I hope so. I think it serves no purpose. People say it looks anaesthetic. Well, as I've said numerous times, do you ever leave a game going, shit, how good was the umpire's bouncing? It's crap. It's great on your body in terms of not bouncing it. Like, I'd love to know. Yeah, I probably didn't do it enough to blow my bear back on that, but it certainly didn't help.
That's right. Do you think that a lot more umpires would stay in the game if you were to canvass them and
no doubt about it?
Would have stayed another couple of years?
It does stuff up your body big time. Yep. And you're practicing because you have to.
Yep.
To do it very few times. It's crazy.
Yep.
It's the only sport in the world which requires an umpire to perfect the skill, which has nothing to do with the bloody game.
Yep.
It's crazy.
Yep. It is, mate. We've done it plenty of times before, but we have to do it again. Do you think the last touch out of bounds should certainly come into the AFL?
Yes.
Is that a priority, or are they going to?
It should be.
I mean, we saw it this weekend. There were a lot more, let's just say, quick calls on the last touch out of bounds. Do you think they're sort of angling a little bit towards that?
Well, as I think it might have been Jared Healy said, they've almost gone that way anyway. So let's just go there, go and do it, and get rid of the controversy.
Yep.
Like, when the ball goes out of bounds at SANFL level, who's.
Yep. Do you think that
now? I don't like it, and the irony of it is, it actually suits AFL football more than SANFL because of the bigger ovals.
Yep.
So there was a few yesterday because Unley's so small. Unley, Norwood, Glenelg, small ovals.
Yep.
An average weather that it drifts the ball to the far side, that it did go out when you go, and that's too big a penalty for what's just happened. To both sides. It's not out of that.
Yeah.
But AFL, they're not playing on small ovals like that in general.
Yep.
So
It sort of felt like it was angling a bit that way last weekend specifically. I just watched it a few times and went, that's deliberate, and then they didn't give it. And then there's other times where you're like, that is completely deliberate, and they gave it every time. So,
well, it's insufficient attempt.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a bit of wah-wah.
Yeah, exactly. Let's take that out. Well, in saying that, with the bounce a little bit earlier on, do we or should we be making ruckman start outside the big circle and run in if it's just a jump ball situation? Because this wrestling that's now become part of ruck contests, has it made the game harder or uglier to watch?
I personally don't mind it. I know a lot of people don't, but let's also remember the reason that went was because so many ruckmen were doing posterior.
Knees. Yep.
And it is, you run at each other, it is a posterior.
But that bigger circle, not the smaller circle in the middle, that bigger circle isn't as big as run up as.
Yeah, but you're still running, jumping at each other.
Yep.
It still brings back the primal thing, and that's how you do your knee. Now, I still think just let it go. Yep. Let them ruck, let it go. There was one at Norwood yesterday, and it was Berkey paid. It was a shithouse decision. Let the ruckman ruck.
Yep.
Yeah.
Let the players play, as we've talked about previously. 4 umpires to 3 with the 4th rotating each quarter to keep everybody fresh. Do you think that's a happy compromise or could be a happy compromise?
No, I just leave it at 3. I just make it 3. I don't think there's any need for anything else. You got to remember that still another umpire's a different interpretation that you're swapping over. It is a unique game because a reasonable amount of time to get rid of the ball.
Yep.
It's quite a crazy sport to umpire.
Yep.
Are we? It's not like netball where it's 3 seconds,
yep.
You know, and all that. So I'd just I'd make it go back to 3 and leave it at that.
Yep. Are we too harsh on our umpires, do you think, because of the crazy nature of the game? And it's probably something that we haven't explored because
I think they've made it too hard to umpire, and that comes as an umpire.
Yep.
But I'm going on and on about it at the moment that they desperately need a ruck coach, a ruckman as ruck coach. I think there's stuff all understanding of the art of rucking, and I include the coaching panels in that. I think there's no knowledge whatsoever.
So does that then lend its way to a full-time
yes,
role
possibly,
for
but I just think
umpires?
I just don't get it. I don't think it's hard because maybe I play the majority of a football in that.
Yep.
You know, and that it should be only if you really block the person or really grab them. And there's just ruck freaking. There was a reserves game a couple of weeks ago at Norwood where, honestly, the guy paid 5 in 1 quarter.
Mm-hmm.
And I reckon one of them was a maybe and the other 4 were diabolical.
Yep. Let the players play. That's our motto, isn't it? Just let them play.
Yep.
Irresponsible reporting may cost the Crows a chance at a hugely talented youngster. Mate, what are your thoughts on this? I know you're up and about it.
Absolutely ropeable with it. It's garbage.
Yep.
There is enough knowledge, well and truly, within football to know what Robbie Young said as well. Yes, Taylor did say the wrong thing. I'm not defending him that.
Nope.
But there should have been charges laid against Robbie Young as well.
Yep.
And if the full story's out, I'm sure the people's attitudes, and don't dare say that, it's crap. It's diabolical. I felt sorry for Taylor.
Well, last night he got dragged into something that he didn't really necessarily need to be dragged into.
And as Ben Williams came out, denied it, and then carried to say, oh, no, he doesn't know. What a load of crap.
Well, she doubled down tonight on the news saying that, her understanding is she's sticking by her guns and that the player manager doesn't know what he's thinking. Well,
I've lost respect for Caro out of this. I've defended her a lot over the years. Nah, absolute pathetic. Disgraceful.
All right, mate. Let's talk some decisions. The Durham hit on Chera. It looked bad at the time. Is 2 weeks?
It did, but
right?
I do agree with James Hurd as well, though. Terrible technique by Sarah. He didn't turn his body to protect himself. He left himself so wide open.
Yep.
And yes, it was bad by Durham, but that was broken neck.
Yes.
Not just concussion.
Yep.
And you've got to protect yourself as well. So, yes, I agree with the 2 games.
Yep.
But, geez, Sarah, I can't believe out of that, you know. And that was the thing, the female side of it's getting better, but that's the sort of thing at female footy they're doing generally do. Not a guy who's played footy right from the whole way through as a kid. Yep. And it was diabolical.
Yep. Addendum to that conversation is then Carlton's medical staff. Should they have taken him off earlier? It took 14 minutes to get him off the ground.
Just unbelievable, Carl. I find it extraordinary, and I can't believe it. He should have been off the ground straight away. No doubt about it.
In real time, it looked nasty as anything.
Exactly.
And yet they're going back through the slow-mos. Yes, he didn't hit him clean with the shoulder, but he did get a little bit of the elbow and a little bit of the hip on the way through.
It had to go off straight away. Diabolical.
Do you expect Carlton to get sanctioned for any of that? I haven't heard anything through the news today.
I would love them to be sanctioned over that because I do think that's irresponsible. That was one straight away where you had to go, shit, we've got to get him off.
If the umpires are mic'd up, just tell them to stop the game, get him off, and away you go. Do you think that decision came from the ARC, or do you think that was a Carlton decision?
It was a Carlton decision, I reckon. I just think
it scratches your head, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
The Tom Stewart bump. What are your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, nothing wrong with it. He was lucky. Look, I think he took a big risk doing it.
Yep.
But he managed to do it perfectly.
Even though, and this is where I struggle to deal with some of these decisions at times, is that obviously we've been very much outcome based. Young fella has broken ribs and ends up in hospital.
No, it turns out he's actually all right.
He's all right now.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. So out of that, but I just...
But see, the Peatling one with Neil wasn't concussed, yet he gets one for the action.
But it was dangerous.
I agree.
I think on this, that's still... They haven't banned the bump. If they ban the bump, yes, obviously. But at the moment, you're allowed to bump. It was textbook. He did it fair.
And the Cherry one looked nasty, but no concussion.
Yeah, but I think that's just more bloody lucky. As he
could have killed him. I totally agree with you. He could have ran through him and absolutely killed him. All right, mate, let's talk quickly on some of the games from last week. Western Bulldogs going down to Hawthorn.
Yeah, disappointing the Dogs in that. Hawthorn better. Funny attitude, suddenly your tackles doubled. They've been pathetic in that regard the last couple of weeks.
Yep.
It doubled. They look better without Sicily. So, wait and see.
We won't go through all the games. We'll just go through a couple of highlights. Carlton getting up over Essendon. Is this the win that Carlton absolutely needed to have?
Yes, they had to win the game.
But it was ugly, though.
Yeah, and look, they're well up at quarter time. The side, Essendon have been forced to put it on the ground as someone said, it's like an 18 side. They're so young, the majority of it. So
I would have picked them as probably one of the younger sides as well. But anyway, and then the big one, yes.
Yeah, but you've only got to have Goldstein playing, which for Aiza
by
changes
about 25 years. Yeah. All right, and let's talk about yesterday's match. Absolute thriller at the MCG. Collingwood getting up over Melbourne by a point. Jeez, it was an exciting game, but a little bit of brain fade late in the game by Melbourne probably cost them, or did cost them, unfortunately, a win.
Yeah, we've certainly had a couple of cases where so teams will practice rucking, ball setups and all that off play. But players not knowing the rules of the game, I find extraordinary. Mac Andrew.
I know you've got the rule book rant coming up a bit later.
No, I might as well do it now.
All right, hang on. I got to play the right promo, mate. Here we go.
Rule book rant.
You beat me to it, mate. All right, fire away. Go to the rule book rant now.
How in the hell can we have this game is meant to be a professional game? Players, Mac Andrew gets pinged for holding the ball and puts the ball on the ground and then argues with the umpire when it's 50. Extraordinary. And apparently Cosy Pickett did it yesterday. I haven't seen that, but apparently he did it as well.
Yep.
And the players, some of the 50s given away on the weekend. Now, I think some of them, the umpires were way too pedantic, and it was, I'm the King Dick, you're out here to watch me, which shits me about umpiring at the moment.
Yep.
But in terms of players not knowing the rule, no excuse, it's not good enough. And it's another tick against the coaching panel. Not on.
Yep. Dismal
failure, Gold Coast.
There you go. Bang. The rule book has spoken. One last one on the AFL. Showboating, mate. Ginnivan showing the ball and Zach Williams doing something similar.
Yeah, I thought his was a bit different, but Ginnivan's lucky that Blighty's not coaching him.
Yep.
Yes.
He didn't kick it all that well either. You almost missed
Geez,
it.
I wish that had gone into the post. That would have been gold.
Oh, would it ever? And Williams in the same boat. Really gave Essendon a little bit of fire there because they kicked the next 3 after that and made the game very, very interesting. All right, let's talk tips for this week, mate. Where are we at? We've got St Kilda and the Bulldogs for, Thursday night at Marvel.
Bulldogs.
Bulldogs for me. Adelaide, Hawthorn v Adelaide at University Tasmania Stadium in Launceston.
Their record in Tasmania is ridiculous. So Hawthorn.
Yeah, Hawthorn for me. I don't think the lid can be taken off of Adelaide's performances at the moment just yet. I think they will play finals, but yeah, where they finish in that 8 is still up for grabs.
If they win this week, suddenly
then
top
the lid's
four's
off.
a big chance.
Yeah, then the lid's off a little bit.
Yeah.
Brisbane v GWS.
Brisbane
for me. Essendon v Geelong at the MCG.
Geelong.
North Melbourne v Fremantle at Optus Stadium in Perth. Now, that's not the right way around, but North Melbourne have sold another home game. Fremantle for me. Port Adelaide v Melbourne. This becomes almost game of the round a bit, doesn't it?
Well, I think Hawthorn Adelaide's the game of the round, but I think this is the other really hard game to tip.
Yep.
Horn Francis back for Port. Melbourne still the lack of connection with their forward line. Like still poor since their flag.
Yep.
I'll go for Port.
What did you make of the Gawn May blow up at the end of the game or last 30 seconds of the game where Gawn just gave him a bit of a shove and get out of my face?
I'd like to exactly know what May said. Yep. I know they've played it down since, but I reckon deep down May was pretty pissed off.
Yep. Does that fall into the rabble category out on the ground? And it was so public on view for everyone to see.
Well, he hasn't got a great rap sheet overall.
No, agreed.
May. You know,
but even Gawn, the way he looked disgusted, like, get out of my face. Like,
yeah,
it is what it is.
Off. Yeah, 30-odd seconds to go. The umpire's called play on, maybe a little bit quick, but he's tried to barrel just to clear the area. It hasn't worked.
Yep.
Now, they had to go coast to coast in 30 seconds.
Yep. Everything had to go right.
I had no problem with that.
Yeah. Everything had to go right.
Yeah.
I think the game of the round, like you said, is Adelaide and Hawthorn, but for various reasons. Adelaide, it probably strengthens their top 4 credentials. Hawthorn, it probably keeps them in touch with the top 4. And then Port Adelaide and Melbourne, really, for any chance mathematically of playing finals this year. Yeah. And then to finish us off, West Coast v Carlton at Optus Stadium as well. We've got a double header, one on Saturday, one on Sunday.
Carlton. I wouldn't tip West Coast to beat themselves.
Carlton for me as well. And they travel reasonably well down or over to the west there. Buys for Collingwood, the Suns, Sydney and Richmond. Some pretty poor games on the weekend. Hopefully this weekend we can rectify that. But it is hard at this time of the year as well. All right, mate, we better take a very quick break. We are running miles over time. Coming up, we've got Ange Postecoglou gets sacked as manager in the SANFL. Adelaide, a very, very big comeback against South Adelaide, and the Thunderbirds just need to get a grip on the season.
You're listening to the Game On Podcast. We'll be right back after this short break.
Looking to buy or sell your home anywhere in Adelaide, from the hills to the sea? Meet Gary KRIEVS, your dedicated local agent from OUWENS CASSERLY Real Estate. With unparalleled knowledge of Adelaide's housing market and a commitment to exceptional service, Gary ensures a smooth and stress-free experience for all your real estate needs. Trust the expert, trust Gary KRIEVS at OUWENS CASSERLY Real Estate. Your next dream home awaits. Contact Gary today on 0422 071 317 or on email garyk@ocre.com.au. And for more listings, please visit owenscasserly.com.au. Make it happen. All right, mate, we continue. Let's talk soccer. Ange is done at Tottenham. Sacked. Was it the right move? I know you watch a little bit of the Premier League, probably a little bit more than what I do, but I think for club culture, you almost want to keep Ange around, but they've seen fit after not having a good Premier League season to sack him.
It's ruthless over there. Like, it's crazy. Teams will go through 3 or 4 managers in one season over there. It's bizarre.
Why isn't there that team building culture? Because it looked like Ange certainly was getting that.
Attempting to. Tottenham had a lot of injuries this year. Huge amount of injuries, especially for soccer.
Yes.
I did win the trophy, and they don't grow on trees, especially at Tottenham.
This is what I don't understand is they haven't won anything in 41 years or whatever it is. Yeah. They finally bring home a little bit of silverware. You've got injuries that obviously plagued them through the year. Couldn't obviously go anywhere as far as Premier League status goes because of that. Then they could potentially trade in and trade out some players to make that squad even better. And Ange is still at the helm trying to build that culture, and yet they move it on. Yeah. I heard someone say that it's not about winning Premier League titles. It's just being about consistent year after year. So that's creating mediocrity. And if you're continually doing that and you're sacking people just to make sure you remain in the Premier League, that's not quite right. You want to be in it to win it, don't you?
Well, it's a really weird system over there. Like, it's considered, you're probably only looking at about 5 sides who are considered a chance to win. Now, if you then finish in that thing, like Brentford finishing 12th or something, that's considered a hugely successful year. Yep. So it's a little bit different. Like, I still say Leicester, when they won the Premier League, is the biggest sporting achievement.
Yep. Especially with the way that they did it and where they came from was just unbelievable. Do we see Ange staying in the Premier League, coaching in the Premier League, or will he get offers elsewhere?
I think they'll be elsewhere. I'll be surprised if someone picks it. But you just never know over there. You really don't. Yep. Honestly.
Should be an interesting watch.
QPR put their manager on gardening leave, they call it. So he's got the bullet, but he's on gardening leave.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
I've not heard that.
Yeah, it's crazy. I looked it up again before I came today. He's still on gardening leave.
Clearly tending to his roses.
They should put a photo of his garden up, and it better be bloody good.
Oh, yeah. Might need to hire him here for the backyard out the back. Let's talk Adelaide United. An early look at Adelaide United. What do we expect after a little bit of a clean-out? Can they attract any more top players, or is it all about the youth and developing them?
Well, it is youth development. Hopefully they're getting Craig Goodwin back, so that changes them up dramatically.
Yep. Can they get one more big name through the door, do you think, or do they?
Possibly.
Yep. So Adelaide United, we and this is why soccer is probably that little bit of a head scratcher. Is that, are they there to win it?
It's a different competition. It's a business where it's a business where you're a selling club to survive.
Yep.
And, that's where
because they're working on transfer.
Yeah, there I am as a QPR man, and we're desperately hoping that Eze get transfers from Crystal Palace, because QPR get 20% of the on-sell thing, which would then enable us to keep players this year. So it's quite crazy following it, how weird it is.
Convoluted in some respects, is that you're thinking more as far as a business rather than actually winning a title, which is just something hard to get on my head around as obviously an Aussie rules person. You're out there to win it every chance you can possibly get. It will be interesting to see Adelaide United youth. All right, let's talk on SANFL. Norwood almost pulled off the unthinkable only, while Sturt remain undefeated. I know you're at this game, mate.
Haven't slept much since last night with it.
I think it gave a few people a lot of nightmares.
15 points up with 5 or so minutes to go. I've got to be honest. I detest the dead set rotation, set rotation. Jackson Callow is playing full forward. There is no need whatsoever for him to come off the ground. He actually uses more energy running to the bench and running back on.
Yep. And
so yesterday when he was off the ground, Nor got the ball up the forward line several times. And he's not. He's there. He kicked 4 goals out of the bit. It's garbage. Look, I will say in our last 5 minutes, wasn't good by playing. Wasn't great coaching either, in my opinion. I just thought they used the wrong player behind the play.
Is that a case of just getting to know?
Yeah, and I question the whole coaching department on that. I'd love to know what happened in that bit. Because because it certainly wouldn't have been my choice. Yep. And, I just thought Norwood did it very poorly.
Nope, that's okay. But they've shown that they're starting to put together a little bit of form. They're starting to get some of those players back and also understanding what the game plan is. We were better yesterday.
Well. I think from half-time to probably the 15-minute, especially the third quarter is our best quarter of the year.
Yep.
Considering who we're playing, we got on top and looked good.
Yep.
Yeah.
Is this a case of 23 all over again?
Yeah, maybe. This
is what it feels like.
We haven't got enough depth. There's no doubt about that. There's a couple of players playing who just, they're not league footballers because we lack depth.
Yep. Something to work on. Obviously, we don't want to talk too early about the off-season, but something to work on the off-season there. Adelaide pull off a miraculous comeback to beat South Adelaide, the Panthers, by 1 point.
But again, South just don't know how to win. Probably a little bit like Norwood yesterday.
Forgotten how to win.
40 points to 8.
Yep.
In that weather on Saturday, it's almost an achievement to lose from there. And a few of us were following it. I was actually next to a sturt table at the Aqaba. We were following it, and we were just going, they're going to lose. Mm-hmm. They're going to lose by a point or two. Yeah.
Yep. The Eagles, Woodville Torrens getting up over Centrals. That's probably a little bit of a surprise considering the obviously the amount.
Yeah, it was. It was at Woodville. The other thing too, I felt sorry for Sid Draper on Saturday. It is so hard that you're playing
against your old club.
Mitch Krieg hated it.
Yep.
Absolutely detested playing against Norwood. And you could see yesterday when Adelaide had got up, I just saw the highlights and saw him in the background. He was almost squeezing. He didn't really know what to do.
Yep.
It's bloody hard.
It is indeed. Port Adelaide getting up over West Adelaide. We did talk about that. Low crowd numbers, a little bit of a concern there. Glenelg flexing their muscles with a big win over North Adelaide. All right, let's talk round 10.
Yeah, split round.
It is Centrals v Adelaide.
Yeah, I'll go Adelaide.
Port Adelaide v the Eagles.
I think this will be close because Port were a bit stronger with the guys, and they sort of got a bit more cohesion yesterday. Yep. But I'll go the Eagles.
All right, and we'll leave the other games until next week. Yep. All right, mate, should be interesting. All right, netball rollercoaster of a season continues with another narrow loss. Still in prime position, but they can't afford to drop too many more games with a very short season, you know what I mean?
It might be too late now. Yeah, it was pretty disappointing. So, yeah.
Mate, yes. We better get ourselves off to another quick break coming up on Friday. Looking forward to this one. Ben Higgins, Part 1.
Yeah, Ben Higgins, the last player to play SANFL League football and Sheffield Shield cricket.
Absolutely. And Keith Thomas, Part 4 of our Part 6 series.
Yeah. You're listening to the Game On Podcast. We'll be right back after this short break.
A Dents and Scratches putting a dent in your day? Introducing Roger Steen Crash Repairs Adelaide, your trusted solution for automotive woes. With over 2 decades of expertise, Roger Steen Crash Repairs guarantees top-notch service, restoring your vehicle to its former glory in no time. From minor dings to major collisions, our skilled technicians handle it all with precision and care, using state-of-the-art equipment and techniques.
Roger Steen Crash Repairs saved my car. It looks brand new.
Fast, friendly and reliable. I wouldn't trust anyone else with my vehicle. Don't let accidents slow you down. Visit Roger Steen Crash Repairs Adelaide at 14 Penner Avenue, Glynde, for quality service you can count on. And here's a special offer just for our listeners. Mention this podcast and receive a $100 discount on your repair. Roger Steen Crash Repairs Adelaide. Excellence in every repair.
Flashbacks.
Partnership between Flintoff and Jones worth 73 in an hour and 6 minutes. Into the commentary box come Michael Atherton and Tony Gray.
Thank you. He's not going to declare, is he? 4:19 for 6. England going really well here. Confidence sky high. Did you ever declare against Australia?
I was going to say, you don't think he's going soft, do you? 19 for 6. England on top. Jason Gillespie struggling like hell. I think we'll see a bit more yet.
What's going on down there? Changing behind the bowler's arm. That's enough to put any batsman off. We might keep an eye on them.
Oh, shame. Robbie Warner.
Well, there we are. Now that looks
steady, Greggy, steady.
I don't think I could bat with that going on down there. Just goes to show how focused these English batsmen are these days.
So you don't think he's going soft, do you?
Extra time. Big finish.
All right, mate, a little bit of fun and frivolity there in the old... Yeah. You just miss those old days of the old cricket commentary boxes where they just let it all hang out and have a bit of fun with it as well.
Tony and Bill together they were the dynamic.
Absolutely, especially when it came to the pigeons. I always remember they'd always get a fair run. That's for sure. All right, let's talk cricket, mate. World Test Championships heating up. Yeah. Australia's best placed with some early predictions, but the batting lineup has some question marks, and so does the bowling lineup.
Yeah, major question marks for mine on the batting. So Labuschagne's never really opened.
Yep.
Sounds like Green's going to bat 3. I thought he would have batted 4.
Yep.
But yeah, everyone's saying he made 300s in county cricket. Yes, yeah, which he did.
Green, this is, yep.
Yeah, but they were against the same side, and North Hampshire had a lot of injuries and that, so he's playing for Gloucestershire, and he did well, don't get me wrong there, but it's a worry that he only made 13 runs in 4 other innings, I think, so, and he batted 5 or 6 there, so I would have thought if they were considering to bat 3, I would have wanted him to bat at 3. So,
playing
so he's never really batted 3. He's batted 4 for WA in the beginning.
Yep.
But, yeah, so I'm a bit bemused by it all. And I'm sorry, Scott Boland got man of the match in our last test match to win the series against India. Sort of like, we haven't beaten India in 10 years.
It's not like they were playing a minnow or Afghanistan or Bangladesh.
Yeah, and sounds like he's going to miss out to Hazelwood, who's played a few 2020 games. Big always questions on Hazelwood's body now, and so I'm bemused a bit by it. And
is this the best time of year to be playing it? Because you actually brought this up perfectly before we started today. Is it the right time of year to be playing it? Because it feels like it's all being squashed in.
But everything's squashed in because of bloody 2020 tournaments and how that rules the world. I'd much rather now, I'm old-fashioned in that way, I'd love us to play a couple of county games. So I'm sorry, to go and have a practice hit for a few days and all that. So Travis Head hasn't had he's just going to come straight in from 2020 and, I'm not.
You're not convinced?
No, I'm not, and I know it's the same for both sides, but I just think, hang on, we're calling something a test champ. So it's a grand final of cricket.
Yep.
Well, we don't play, it's the equivalent of an AFL first game of the year being called the grand final.
Yep. With
no games beforehand.
Yep.
I just think it's weird.
Yep. I know you're a cricket tragic, mate, and you'll be watching, but it's
there won't be much Peter sleep the next few nights.
Fair enough, mate. Briefly touch on the NRL State of Origin's back, ready for game 2, mate?
Yeah, hopefully Queensland come back
and make it an interesting series. We'll follow that one a little bit more next week. Let's talk tennis, mate. Carlos creates French Open history after 2 sets to love down, 5-3 down, love 40 down. Comes back to winning one of the all-time great games.
It's one of the great comebacks in history. It's that sort of thing which is tennis folklore over the years. Like this will be brought up in another 10, 15 years' time, this match, like the McEnroe comeback and that sort of thing. So, it's as Sinner said, it's the one he's let slip. Yeah, so it's a big one.
Coco Gauff wins the women's in her second career title. Young lady, obviously trying to follow in the footsteps of Serena and Venus Williams. Certainly has got the game, but probably needs to, sort of adjust her game for other surfaces because she did quite well, obviously.
Mentally as well, I think.
Yeah, exactly right. Onto the grass court season we go. It should be absolutely interesting. Australian top couple of rankings in the men's. Lexi Popperin has snuck up to 21 in the world, mate. Alex Dimonor holding quite firm inside the top 10, and Jordan Thompson up to 37. So we're starting to get a few there. And in the women's, we've got Daria Katsakina, who is obviously
the recruit picked up in the draft.
Absolutely, at world number 16.
And don't we love him as we come in the draft like that?
I saw actually a little short YouTube video or a Facebook video or something like that with her behind the scenes, and absolutely loves the Australian team and the culture and how they have a lot of fun.
I was being facetious.
No, absolutely. And Maya Joint, who's somebody who I think we're going to get to know very, very well, is up to number 51 in the world as well. Tom Milanovic is obviously coming back from injury, just getting her groove on, back to 64 in the world as well.
Just needs someone to come through.
Absolutely, mate. The good, the bad, the ugly, mate. I'm going to finish off with a good one tonight. Norwood Oval hosted a Div 12 Resi's game with 5,400 people there on, Saturday night, pouring with rain. Absolutely fantastic event, obviously for a bit of charity as well. But to get that kind of crowd, most SANFL clubs would love that on a regular basis, wouldn't they?
Well and truly. Yep. No, huge.
So that's my good for the week. I think we've covered enough bad and ugly, so we better wind things up there, mate. Thank you for joining us once again. As we say, as per usual, like, rate, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Pass it on to friends, family, teammates, foes, etc., etc. Until next week, thank you.
In this crazy world we live in, we all need the distraction. Enjoying the show? Like, rate, and subscribe. Hook up and connect with us on social media at Sportscast SA. We'll see you next time on Game On.